Approximately 8 to 6 million Hispanics coming into the United States and 41 million Asians. You have been the majority minority for 400 years in this country. You have been the number 2 population for 400 years. You're going to get kicked out of being number 2. You're going to go down and become number 4. Now, common sense, even a 3rd grade education would tell you, if you didn't get anything when you were number 2, you all jumped ahead of me, but anyway, you can guess what you're going to get when you become number 4.
President Biden, do you support reparations?
Yeah, I mean, since I haven't spoken in this chance, number one, the reason we're the country we are is because of immigration. We've been able to cherry pick the best from every single time. The people who come here have determination, resilience. They are ready to stand up and work like the devil. We have 24 out of 100 children in our school today is Hispanic. The idea that we are going to walk away and not provide every opportunity for them is that not only stupid and immoral, but it's bad for America. They are the future of America. Systemic racism that has plagued our nation for far, far too long. I said that over the course of the past year that the blinders have been taken off the nation, the American people. But what many Americans didn't see or had simply refused to see couldn't be ignored any longer. Those 8 minutes and 46 seconds that took George Floyd's life opened the eyes of millions of Americans and millions of people around all over the world. It was the knee on the neck of justice, and it wouldn't be forgotten. And it's not white Americans' fault, but just a fact.
At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farm. Not only that, today, many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. Now, this is what we are faced with, and this is a reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
We are owed $104 trillion on the very low end, plus $735 billion recurring. This number does not include the cost of about 50 Black Wall Streets that were decimated, nor compound interest from 2017 when Sean B. Rochester's book, The Black Tax, was published, nor the cost of Black life, nor the cost of living increases, nor the war on drugs, nor the current day pandemic. The number I'm working with is for slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives.
Good evening on the West Coast. Good evening in the mountain. Good evening in the central. Good evening on the East Coast. You know exactly who it is, family. Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the reparationist perspective, bringing you those Adocs hot topics and making the case for reparations, making a case for weaponizing our vote and socializing our suffering. And I am excited over this new series that God has birthed through me, where I am reaching across the aisle with the olive branch to the immigrants to invite them into this demand for social and economic justice for Adocs. Those of us who descend from chattel slavery, whose ancestors' bodies were used to build all the wealth all the groups eat from, and I'm here to make that case before them in this new series entitled Dear Immigrants, okay, because of Adocs and why you should be an ally in our fight for social and economic justice, because as we all know, family, dollars bring dignity, and being poor makes you a target. May he rest in power, George Floyd. We are at George Floyd, 9 minutes and 29 seconds, and it wasn't because of 4 years of Trump, as some Adocs and immigrants and whites foolishly believe. The terror against our people has been happening since they bought us, kidnapped us from Africa, and drug us over here, and used our bodies worse than animals to build all the wealth on that table that we are now the legs of. We are the anchor of white capitalism. And you need to understand how we got here, because we know what's not being told to you. We know that they're giving you access to whiteness based on your skin tone. And when you're black, your money buys your access to whiteness. Like Obama, white mother, descendant of slave owners, and a Kenyan father, worth $70 million last year. Okay? While telling us no to reparations, they paid him extremely well to keep the government's boot on our neck. You see, it just didn't happen to George Floyd. It's been happening to us since we were dragged here. And I'm here to appeal to you, immigrants. Do not get in bed with this government who tries to paint us, the reparationist movement, as xenophobic. There is nothing wrong with us finally unflattening blackness, so this government can see clearly who it killed and stole from in the trillions over multi-generations. Many of you are in this country because what our ancestors paid that price. That is your reparations. You may not like hearing it, but none of you suffered what our ancestors suffered in this new series that God has birthed through me, that was manifested yesterday. We're going to do this every day until we get y'all on board, so you can see beyond the puckery that's being told to you what time it is with American descendants of chattel slavery. We didn't become the anchor because we were lazy. We didn't become the anchor because we didn't pull ourselves up by our bootless straps. We didn't go from 4 million post-emancipation to 40 million today if we weren't steadily trying. But we've got a government that don't even have to call us nigger no more. They just legislated it. And that's how we got to George Floyd for all the world to see. That is Adocs life. Our skin is our sin, and we simply don't have the complexion for the protection. They are able to make all the other fairer skinned groups white. They made Irish white, Italian whites, Jews white, now Hispanic white, and Asian white. So, with that said, we can't morph into whiteness, and we don't have the other part where we can't buy whiteness, you see. A lot of the black immigrants, they're not bringing over the poor ones. Okay? They're turning them away. Just look it up. If you're coming in from Haiti and you're poor, you are being put back out of the country. The only poor they will bring over those borders are those they can make white. That would not be American descendant of chattel slavery. The plan is to extinct us, make us fourth-class citizens in the country our ancestors built with their lives, and give us cashless reparations. And so we need you to understand the truth of how we got here. Okay? And that's what this show is designed to do for those who are really interested in becoming an ally. We'll see. I'm going to be over here till I get some of you over here. Welcome, Lynn Derrickson, Jay Bird. Thank you so much, Debonair One, Trey Lincoln. And for those of you who have yet to chat where you're slinging bricks from, welcome to the live. So let's get into it. Now, yesterday I shared with you about a great ally, Asian ally named Cheyenne Lin, and she talked about anti-Black racism, okay, in the U.S. She broke it all the way down. I cannot wait to have her as a guest on this show. That's something I'm working on. But today, we're going to go over the video where she talks about anti-Black racism amongst her people, Asian American. That's the only way we get allies. It's for the woke ones in each of these respective groups to sound the alarm to their group so they can see through what this government is trying to do while they're trying to stifle the Black Lives Matter, which we know the only life that don't really matter up in this piece is Black life. They want to stifle that. They want to break the back. They don't want folks throughout the world talking about Black Lives Matter, and they don't want to pay us reparations. So what do? In a very slick way, they pivot to anti-Asian racism and try to make Adocs, who have helped Asians to $387 billion in sales last year through the hair shops, the nail shops, and the liquor stores in our communities, the face of anti-Asian racist sentiment. Don't y'all fall for that trick. I'm here to make sure you don't fall for the tricks. These Asians will not call out the white oppressors. They will not call out the white inferiors, I call them, not the supreme, about the oppressive boot of this government and its civilians' necks on that of Adocs. So they are white inferiors to me. There is nothing, you understand? There is nothing supreme about it. Let me silence my phone real quick because that made me jump and lose my thought. Don't fall for the tricks, basically, is what I'm trying to tell you. Don't do it. They're trying to make us the face of it, and many Asians, far too many, are not calling it out. They're not calling it white inferior. They're the ones harassing and murdering them with impunity. Civilians, mostly. I've not heard of the cops. They're not sharing with you about 68% of their assaults are verbal. We're going to get into it. And that's the problem I have, and that's what gave birth to the show. How dare you make it an Adocs issue when we are the ones that feed you predominantly, and you don't share. So Cheyenne Lin gets it, and we're going to hear from her momentarily, but let me just read a little bit to you first and foremost, okay, and get the show rolling, because I don't want to keep you beyond an hour. Okay, hold on. Let's see here. I want to jump to why the trope of Black Asian conflict in the face of anti-Asian violence dismisses solidarity. A recent survey shows that more than 3 out of 4 Asian Americans worry about experiencing hate crimes, harassment, and discrimination because of COVID-19. Now, me speaking, I'm going to be commenting in between. They're talking about recent hate. I'm talking about over 400 years of anti-Black racism in this country, and Biden feels more compelled to give Asian protections, who now want $300 million. AAPI is demanding that. We'll get into it. They want $300 million to combat their anti-Asian racist sentiment, and we still don't have an anti-lynch law. Back to the text. Among Chinese and Asian Indians, Kamala's people, down here in LA, the Asian Indians are worth $465,000 liquid to Adocs $200 liquid. That's from a 2004 to 2014 Color of Wealth LA report. You can PDF it. The figures are even higher at 84% and 80% respectively. These findings may be unsurprising in light of shocking video footage of anti-Asian violence that has recently gone viral. Me speaking, how many of them have been witnessed on the videos, body slamming our women, trying to choke them out at their hair shops, at their stores? You got Latasha Harlins, who the grocer, Asian grocer, executed over a bottle of orange juice. You've got Peter Liang having executed Gerling in the project stairwell. You got that Asian fool that executed Philando Castile. You got Tao in the current Chauvin trial, who threatened the people with mace and pushed them back when they were attempting to save George Floyd's life. But I digress. Now they want to pivot to this. This is a trick bag. Viewers of these videos witness perpetrators shoving elderly men and women to the ground, assaulting Asian American men and women in the face, and stabbing an Asian American man in the back with an 8-inch knife. Asian-owned businesses like New York's Diane Famous Foods, already under financial stress because of the pandemic, are also struggling to keep their employees safe. The spate of unprovoked attacks elicited a rallying cry that something must be done for Asian Americans. However, this cry is a year overdue. Our cries are over 400 years. Now, recently, of course, we know that the fool down in Georgia executed 8 Asian women because he was sexually repressed and having a bad day. But they want to call out all these other things. I'm not trying to undermine that this is a problem. It just ain't an Adocs against Asian problem, like the mainstream media and this government is complicit in trying to start a feud between the races so that we can be distracted while they rob and pillage the storehouse. Moving on. Since March of last year, there have been over 3,000 self-reported incidents of anti-Asian violence from 47 states in the District of Columbia, ranging from stabbings and beatings to verbal harassment and bullying to being spit on and shunned. While being spit on is offensive, in the time of coronavirus, it's potentially lethal. These senseless acts of anti-Asian violence have finally garnered the national attention by the deserve, but they have also invoked anti-Black sentiment and reignited the trope of Black-Asian conflict because some of the videotape perpetrators appear to have been Black. Some observers immediately reduced anti-Asian violence to Black-Asian conflict. This is not the first time this trope has been weaponized. Black-Asian conflict and Black-Korean conflict was more specifically became the popular frame of the LA riots in '92. The trope failed to capture the reality of Black-Korean relations 3 decades ago, and it fails to capture the reality of anti-Asian bias today. A recent study finds that, in fact, Christian nationalism is the strongest predictor of xenophobic views of COVID-19, and the effect of Christian nationalism is greater among white respondents compared to Black respondents. Moreover, Black Americans have also experienced high levels of racial discrimination since the pandemic began. Hence, not only does the frame of 2 minoritized groups in conflict ignore the role of white national populism, but it also absolves the history and systems of inequality that position them there. Recognizing both the pitfalls of the frame and the need to address it after the '92 riots, African American and Korean American leaders worked toward interracial solidarity and restorative justice through local churches and community organizations. A critical first step was educating both communities about their respective histories, including shared experiences of colonization, oppression, discrimination, and resistance. For Korean immigrant business owners who had little understanding of the brutal history of U.S. race relations, education and experience in Black neighborhoods ushered in a new manner of empathy. And that is what my show is designed to do, to help us see Adocs. Because we get that this government has been complicit in miseducating you about what they've intentionally done to us. And now want to weaponize you to not just neutralize us economically, but neutralize us wherein the vote is concerned. And we need you to stop listening to the mainstream media and listen to this show to begin to understand and come up with some empathy to get in the fight and to lock arms with us. Because once we break the back of white inferiority and domestic terror against Adocs, we all get to live in peace. You won't have to be on the end of a story like the Asians now, where the chickens come home to roost. Back to the text. The fruits of decades of community organizing, education, and empathy are reflected in Korean Americans' racial attitudes about discrimination, civil rights, and restorative justice. Among Asian groups, Korean Americans hold some of the most progressive attitudes on these fronts. For example, more than 9 in 10 Korean Americans believe that there is at least some discrimination against Black people in our society today. 70% also agree that the government should do more to protect the civil rights of Black Americans. And 67% agree that local governments should shift spending from law enforcement to programs. But even among Asian Americans more generally, many recognize commonalities with Black Americans. New research shows that half of Asian Americans across 10 different national origin groups feel they have something or a lot in common with Black Americans when it comes to government, political power, and representation. Empathy and justice beyond just us. As we enter the second year of COVID-19 pandemic, we are seeing signs that all Americans, especially Black and Asian Americans, are reimagining what community safety, interracial solidarity, and restorative justice could look like. Though arrests have increased in neighborhoods with a greater share of Asian residents since the pandemic, increased arrests have not ceased incidents of anti-Asian hate. Working directly with residents, Asian American advocates and community leaders are calling for non-carceral solutions to anti-Asian violence. Hundreds of Americans have volunteered to escort elderly Asian Americans to help them feel safe, and hundreds more gathered last month at rallies in Oakland and New York to protest anti-Asian violence. At these rallies, Black and Asian communities came together not only to show solidarity, but also to rebut the hollow claim that anti-Asian violence is a manifestation of Black-Asian conflict. Such real-world solidarity provides further support for recent studies showing that Black Americans are more likely than white or Hispanic Americans to recognize racism toward Asian Americans, and that Asian Americans who experience discrimination are more likely to recognize political commonality with Black Americans. Last paragraph, family. COVID-related anti-Asian bias is not inevitable. While China virus rhetoric has been linked to violence and hostility, new research shows that priming Americans about the coronavirus did not increase anger among the majority of Americans toward Asian Americans. But anger among a minority has invoked fear among the majority of Asian Americans. Anti-Asian violence is real, but so too are the public acts of interracial solidarity that receive far less attention. Both reflect the moment in which we live today. But the latter is a reminder of what is possible when we imagine empathy and justice that goes beyond just us. Thank you so much for all of you that have joined the live, whom I haven't said hello to. Let me now, on that note, show you an ally in action. Stand by for the video. This is Cheyenne Lin. Please let me know in the chat that you can hear me. Hear the video when I play it. And I'll be commenting in between, as per usual.
We Asian Americans have weaponized our proximity to whiteness in order to murder Black people. George Floyd and Latasha Harlins should be here today, but they aren't because of our individual actions and our collective inaction. We can't just blame white people for pitting us against each other either, because the fact of the matter is that Asian cultures have a huge colorism problem and a huge problem with Black people. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today is part 2 of my 3-part series about unpacking anti-Blackness in the United States. And if you're new to my channel, last week I posted part 1 of this series. Part 1 is a basic one-on-one conversation about how white supremacy operates in the US in order to maintain Black people as second-class citizens. The next video in the series, which will come out next week, will be about Gone with the Wind. So if you're interested in that, please subscribe and ring the bell so you're notified when I post new videos. But today is part 2, and today we're going to be talking about anti-Blackness in the Asian American community.
Sorry, it's always really awkward talking to you guys after being gone for a while. Almost as awkward as my dad around my Black friends. Hey Dad!
Hey Mr. Wu.
Is it cool if my friends stay over?
Of course. And where's my gun at? Teach me how to duty.
And don't worry, my dad has nothing against Black people. He's just a little uncomfortable around you guys.
I post a lot on my channel about racism that Asian people face, but today I want to talk about the racism that Asian people take part in and perpetuate. Though I was adopted into a white family and grew up in a very white world, doesn't mean that I haven't seen anti-Blackness at play. Quite to the contrary, actually. When I was younger, I was very invested in becoming Asian American. I took traditional Chinese dance classes with both Chinese American students and Chinese American adoptees. I was friends with a lot of Korean American kids who were mainly children of recent immigrants, and after I graduated high school, I took part in a few Asian American clubs at my college. And even though I'm still seen as whitewashed by the community due to the fact that I grew up white, I am still Asian, and not enough of us are speaking out in support of Black Lives Matter. And I think that's for a few reasons, which I'll get into at the end of this video. But first I want to talk about how Asian Americans benefit from white supremacy and use our proximity to whiteness in order to subjugate Black people. And I've decided to structure this part of the video in a numbered list with 5 main points. So let's get started. So number 1, conditional whiteness. Asian Americans have benefited from white supremacy. Though Asian Americans face their own set of racist stereotypes and have their own racist history in this country, our model minority status given to us by white people is somewhat of a privilege. It means we don't get racially profiled by the police and that we can walk freely without someone calling the cops on us. For the most part, we're seen as non-threatening. However, as seen with COVID, our privilege is conditional. I said this in my COVID video, but there are so many Asian American people who for the first time were saying America is so racist and racism against Asian people in the US has been reawoken. Like, I don't think it was ever asleep. But that just goes to show how much white people have made us feel comfortable at the expense of Black people. White people only treat Asian Americans better than Black people, so we don't realize that they're full human beings, so that white people can create this culture war between us so we Asian Americans don't empathize with their plight. And if you're an Asian American person who sees Black people as thugs, congratulations, you've successfully been turned into Uncle Sam's puppet. So Asian America, here is your wake-up call. Stop trying to claim whiteness and stand with Black Lives Matter. So fuck Tou Thao, the Hmong immigrant who stood by and watched and let George Floyd be murdered. And do not stand in solidarity with him or any other Asian American right-wing pundit. I'm looking at you, Lauren Chen and Joey Gibson. So number 2, let's talk about colorism. Again, half Black Asian kids have it really tough. They're similar to adoptees in a way in that they are never fully accepted by either community that raised them.
ちょっと簡単に教えてもらえますか？
アメリカと日本のハーフで、国籍はでも日本で、生まれてからずっと日本の学校。
なんか英語が上手だって思い込んで英語で話しかけてきたりとかしますか？
話しかけ 慣れることはそんなにないけど、話しかけたら、ノーイングリッシュとか言われたり。
マイカさんがどこの出身だっていうふうに思うことが多いですか？
アメリカかアフリカ。なんか普通に学校で、マイカってアメリカ出身なのって言われて、全然ここら辺だよって。
地元だよ。
地元だよ。
However, they're specifically not welcome into the Asian community for being black. Kevin Wu, who used to be a very famous YouTuber, used to make skits with his dad and make jokes about how Asian American parents see black people as criminals just for being black. Asian people are specifically taught to never marry outside of their race, but specifically not to date black folk. And that's really racist and needs to stop. So number 3, anti-blackness and appropriation in the Asian American community. A few very well-known Asian American celebrities have gotten famous for using AAVE and popularizing this narrative that they come from the hood and that they're not like other Asians. Constance Wu, who played Jessica Huang on Fresh Off the Boat, was written to speak in AAVE and say things like, hell no. And not a single person on set, specifically an Asian person on set, thought that this could be racist. Aquafina, who has been very quiet since the BLM protests started, has created this narrative for herself that she grew up on the streets and is ghetto and uses AAV so much that it's downright uncomfortable.
You're right. Damn straight I'm right. Fake land, I'm always right. But you can't swerve. I'm not gonna swerve, not for her. You're not a chicken. You gonna roll up to that way and you gonna be like, bok bok, bitch.
Eddie Huang also claims street cred, uses AAV, and heavily identifies with black culture, even though he's not black. And lastly, the Jabberwockies, who are primarily made up of Asian members, won America's Best Dance Crew for their hip-hop routines. They have one black member, but they market themselves primarily as an Asian American group working to break the mono-minority stereotype. So why do Asian Americans feel this need to appropriate black culture? I think it boils down to 2 main reasons. 1, Asian kids use black culture as a way of acting out. To many Asian parents, the worst thing that they could possibly be perceived as is black, aka the bad minority group. Asian Americans are very invested in staying under the radar, being the good minority, and that basically means just being as white as possible. And this can be a very oppressive environment for some kids, so they choose black culture as a way to act out because it'll make their parents the most angry and it'll also help them shed the quiet and demure Asian stereotype. And let it be known that these stereotypes that some Asian people are so invested in breaking were created by white people. Just like how the stereotype that all black people are loud doesn't exist in any way, shape, or form. So Eddie Huang and Aquafina, you are wasting your time. So the second reason why Asian American people love to appropriate black culture is because they want to do what's cool. And like white people, to them, black culture is the definition of cool. And yeah, black culture is awesome, but it's not for you or for us, especially when the creators of black cultural products are mainstreamed to be for everyone. And even worse is that the black creators of these products and trends are never given their check and proper dues. Black music and fashion can have an influence on you, but you can't go around sporting gold chains and using AAV and not say anything about Black Lives Matter and not interrogate how you, with your light-skinned mono-minority privilege, have added to anti-blackness in this country. So number 4, appropriation in K-pop. K-pop is heavily influenced by Black American culture, from the music videos to street fashion. The looks that you'll see are taken straight out of Black neighborhoods in the US. Athleisure or streetwear, velour tracksuits, bucket hats, big sneakers, and of course, braids are all staples in South Korean high fashion. And this is very dangerous considering countries in East Asia are very racist and profile Black people as criminals, but are completely open and ready to accept Black culture. And it's not just fashion. South Korea loves rap. South Korean rappers are seen as extremely talented, but their influences are the originators of that music, Black people. And this is where the hypocrisy comes in. Many K-pop artists acknowledge that rap and hip-hop were created by Black people, but they still mock AAVE and Black people in general. And that's not even to mention that their wealth and status is piggybacking off of Black innovation. And this reckoning with racism in the K-pop fandom and K-pop artists being racist themselves is being addressed by much more knowledgeable scholars than me. I highly suggest Stitch's content on anti-Blackness in the K-pop fandom especially. Her links to her Twitter and YouTube will be in the description down below. So number 5 and the last point on this list, describing how Asian Americans perpetuate anti-Blackness. Before we delve into why it's so hard for Asian Americans to talk about anti-Blackness in the Asian American community, is number 5, experiencing anti-Blackness as an Asian American growing up in a white family. So I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. I grew up in a very racist household. I once told a relative of mine that I was taking an African American studies course in college, and they asked me why. Black history was not something that was spoken of. Black stories were not something I heard growing up unless it was from an extremely racist children's book. I watched Gone with the Wind from a very early age. I was taught that the founding fathers were great guys and that the Civil War wasn't fought over slavery, and that racism was solved in the 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement. Watching shows for Black people such as The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and That's So Raven was looked down upon because those shows weren't for me. My family didn't even want me listening to K-pop. Nothing was for me unless it centered white people, and that was extremely hurtful. And because I had this growing resentment for white people and their media, I looked for representation elsewhere through K-pop and K-dramas and other Asian-driven media. And later in my college years, I studied a lot of Black history and watched a lot of Black media and really enjoyed it, as well as learned a lot. And I highly suggest that if your family and community is mostly white or homogeneous, that you should look outward and educate yourself on Black history. So now that I'm done talking about these 5 points about how Asian Americans hold up white supremacy and perpetuate anti-Blackness, I now want to answer this very complex question. And that is, why is it so hard for Asian Americans to talk about how they take part in anti-Black racism? I think the main reason is that there's a lot of resentment between the Black and Asian communities. We've hurt each other, but only one of us has benefited from white supremacy. We Asian Americans have weaponized our proximity to whiteness in order to murder Black people. George Floyd and Latasha Harlins should be here today, but they aren't because of our individual actions and our collective inaction. We can't just blame white people for pitting us against each other either, because the fact of the matter is that Asian cultures have a huge colorism problem and a huge problem with Black people. And this idea that we can't just blame white people, but that we have to blame ourselves and look inward is hard and uncomfortable. But it should be. It should make you feel guilty and wrong. And those are tough feelings to process, but do you know what's tougher? Being hunted down and murdered just for existing. Asian Americans must stand in solidarity with Black people. We cannot continue to stand idly by and let fellow people of color get murdered. Our whiteness is conditional and not something that we should cling to. Our fight against the white capitalist patriarchy is the same, and we need to understand that. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please comment down below about what you think about anti-Blackness in the Asian American community. And please don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about next week's video, which will be about Gone with the Wind and is the third and, for now, last installment in this series about anti-Blackness. So please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next Friday. Thank you again for watching. Bye.
That was the fabulous Cheyenne Lin. I thank you, Jamie. JBO, thank you for joining the live. Das Nukesta, thank you. Trey Lincoln, all of you whom I can see and whom I can't see, thank you so much for joining the live. I've just got a couple of more items. Tomorrow we're going to go over her Gone with the Wind segment, okay? And I'll be doing some talking points in between that. I really didn't want to talk too much because, as you see, I'm down to 4 more minutes before the show is scheduled to conclude. But there are just a couple of other things I want to share. First of all, I got to share the copyright disclaimer. Stand by. Let me put that up here because ScrewTube and Racebook always come for me, y'all. They like to silence parts of my video if I don't put this disclaimer up. So let me share it real quick. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, personal use tips, the balance in favor of fair use. So, prayerfully, that will keep my video from getting shut down. Let me close that out. And then there's one last thing I wish to share with you about how we can't afford to be racist in the country our ancestors built with their lives. Let me show you the median income of the major groups in this country. Sharing the screen, stand by. It's going to blow your hair back to see that we're the anchor. Hold on one second. Where is it at? All right. This is how. Just give me a second, family. So many windows. I got so many screens open. Lord, okay, what's it? That's the W. Demographics, is that it? Hold on, let me see. Share. No, that's not what I wanted. Oh, stop share. What is the name of this? Okay, I see it here. Hold on, family. Just give me a moment, and then I'll pray us out after I do this table and make some comments. Okay, it starts with an L. Application window. Chrome tab. Ah, here we go. Okay, can you guys see that? I'm going to blow it up. So you'll hear me, but you won't be able to see me. But it's more important for me that you see these numbers, and I'll come back momentarily. Oh, while I'm over here, I keep forgetting to ask for you guys' support. Let me wave the banner. Thank you so much, Deborah Burrows, Astrid Mauer, Brian Johnson, Trey Lincoln, Robin Freelix. Who am I forgetting? For all of your donations to the show, and for those of you who would love to contribute to me educating the masses and advocating for the socio and economic justice for Adocs, please do not hesitate to give. I'm going to fly the banner now, just while I finish out this last segment of the show. I keep forgetting to do this, but you guys help support me in doing this extraordinary work, extraordinary and necessary work. So let's get into the table I've just brought up is from 2018. I'm going to deal with the, they're very closely related, but basically they've got median household incomes for standalone groups, and then they've got it alone or in combination with other races. So I'm going to jump to the second one when I get down to the Hispanic category that's blank on the one side. So let's get into it. The white American population is 236,173,020. Their median household income is $65,902 nationwide. This is from 2018. Blacks, we're the second largest group with 41,617,764. Our median income was $41,511. Now, when you combine it with other combinations of Black, you get 46 million of us, but the median moves $400. So it's $41,911. American Indian and Alaska Native, their population is $2,801,587. They are higher than us at $44,772. Now, when combined with other groups, their population increases to 5,710,410. And that gives them a 48,370 median income, as compared to 41,911 for a combined Black in this country for Adocs, who are the majority of the Blacks in this country. 90% of this number is us. That 41 million is us. When we add 5 million more, that's the immigrants. Moving on, Asian Americans, whom this country is trying to claim Adocs is exercising some type of racist, anti-Asian acts against the Asians, who are the ones that are wealthy enough to be like our white oppressors, and they are. Not all. I'm not talking all of any of the groups. As you just saw, Cheyenne Lin is a staunch ally, and I look forward to having her on the show. But even she called it out. The murders of George Floyd, while Officer Tao pushed back and threatened the audience, the crowd that was angry, trying to save George's life, with mace and pushing on their persons, so that Chauvin could finish the act of kneeing his life out of his body. I'm showing you these numbers so you can understand where the real racism dwells, and the government and the mainstream media's complicity in trying to shift the narrative from Black Lives Matter, shift the narrative away from reparations in the trillions over multi-generations, to make it about all lives matter and class-based policies, which clearly can't fix this. So back to the text. Asian Americans, 18,415,198. They are the third largest in this country. They have a median income of 87,243. Double us, 1.5 times more. Well, about 22,000 more than even white folks. And you wonder why there was an insurrection at the Capitol. When they're combined with other groups, they're 22,137,269 in population. And the median income actually goes down to $85,897. When you're talking Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islanders, they're 626,054 with a median income of 61,911. When you combine them with other races, it's 1,468,239 in population and a $64,865 median income. But American descendants of chattel slavery built this country. Let that sink in. Some other race, I guess that's everybody else, 16 million. Well, not everybody, because they have a category for Hispanic. They've got this large group of others at 16,253,785 with a median, 16,253,785 in population with a median income of 48,983. We are on the bottom, family. This is why we as Adocs are at George Floyd 929. When you combine all the other, some other race with the other, some other races, you get 18,146,776 for a median income of $49,805. The Hispanic or Latina of any race, they only have the combination of 59,763,631. They are second. We are now third. Asians are now fourth. With a median household income of $51,404, I have shared with many of you in my archives how here in LA, based on the 2004-2014 Color of Wealth LA, which is a free PDF, that the Hispanics are 17% degreed to our 44% degreed. At that time, we were 53,500 median income here, and they were a 50,000 median income. Now they're 59,763,631 in population, more than Adocs and other combined blacks of 46,261,485. Their median income is 51,404 to our median of 41,911. But our ancestors, heinous chattel, slave, labor, built the wealth all these groups eat from, and we are the anchor, and we are at George Floyd 929. Because dollars bring dignity, and being poor makes American descendants of chattel slavery a target. For government-sanctioned executions and by civilians alike. Not Hispanic or Latino, it's 267,403,808 for a median income of $64,025. And this is why we need all hands on deck. This is why we need all hands on deck. You can't say that Black Lives Matter and not give a damn about economic inclusion. Because as you can clearly see by the numbers, without it, we will continue as we have with a succession of more George Floyd incidents even after he was executed. It didn't stop. They just stopped reporting it and pivoted towards this anti-Asian racist sentiment from the white supremacists that they identify with for their wealth position in this country, and they're leading. It's not justified, but it's the race soldiers, the civilian ones, the white inferiors that are messing with them because of the money. This is what the government allows, giving everyone a pathway to citizenship before giving us our reparations and making us American. And now they have the unmitigated gall, Sheila Jackson Lee, Jamaican descendant, to want to put together a reparations commission for cashless repair. Evanston, Illinois has got $10 million and want to tell Black folks how to spend it. The gall. They don't want to give us cash. They want to give you more programs that they give with the left and take away with the right, like affirmative action, like the Homestead Act. We'll be learning more about all of the puckery of this country with 3 Ks so that you can understand that how we got here is by design of institutional systemic racism, no fault of our own, and every fault of the white folks in this country that your money and your pigment allow you to identify when they allow you. But trust and believe, they only allow you to come within a certain threshold before their oppressive boot comes for you and they get a ride to Burger King. We need you, immigrants, to stop this nonsense of piggybacking on whatever the white oppressors tell you about American descendants of chattel slavery. Cut it out. There is nothing xenophobic in being last in the country your ancestors built with their lives under the most heinous chattel slave labor known to the born world. That is who we are. Put some respect on Adocs and join us if you really care about Black life. And as long as you don't give a damn what's currently happening to the Asian by the white inferior racial glacier donkeys, will be coming to a community near you. There is nothing in this country that compares to anti-Black racism. And this show is designed to educate you about that. Every day that I can when I'm not advocating. We are at George Floyd 929. Don't just march about it, be about it. And with that said, family, let me pray us out. If you want to get in this fight alongside us, which I pray you will, and make this video go viral, please write me at Friends of ADOS TV. I'm putting it in the chat at gmail.com. I want to see you tomorrow. Day 3, I'll be giving highlights and updates of the Chauvin trial on my first segment at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, followed by this segment, Dear Immigrants, because of Adocs. Thank you so much for joining the live. Let me pray us out. I want to share with you that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever Adocs and its allies are, God truly is, because you are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. Until tomorrow, family, you make it a beautiful God-inspired rest of your evening. Know that if no one's told you today that I love you Black and I love you strong. Peace, family. Ciao for now.